What up, world? It's your boy Chuck Wick, ill, aka Charles Brown, back again with another Talking Facts. But first, I want to ask you, are you good? Good. All right, man, it's a whole lot going on. If you've been paying attention over the weekend, your boy Joe Budden, Rory, and Mal have all had more to say about this incident. I think we are turning a corner where this thing is about to be completely over, and it's not going to be too much more talking because it ain't much more to say. Rory and Mal did their own special. I think it was like an hour and change, where they discussed what they felt was the truth, quote unquote, about the situation. And it felt like when you listen to it and you peel back the layers, not only are these dudes hurt, but they got a lot to stand on. They got a lot to say that a lot of people weren't saying. A lot of people had the whole story mixed up. And what it looked like on the outside to us, it actually wasn't that to a degree. So let me break down what I saw in the podcast. No, not the podcast, but the video. I believe they did it on Vimeo or another. They didn't do it on YouTube. And then someone transferred, a lot of people transferred it over to YouTube, right? And they basically were saying that when they started this thing, from day one, well, I think they said from day one it was Joe by himself. And Rory was putting the podcast on SoundCloud for free. So it wasn't no money involved when this thing first started. And it sounds like they're saying, Rory and Mal are saying that Budden was doing sex talk. And Budden was like, I can't just keep doing shows with sex talk. Let me get somebody on here with me, come and do this with me. And I think he put Rory on the show at that point. So him and Rory started doing the show together. Apparently, this is what it sounded like to me. And a couple episodes later, Mal was invited to do 1 or 2 episodes and ended up staying on. So all this was before the money even started coming in. The show was just 3 dudes talking. And they saying that Mal made the show more manly, made it more like, let's talk about guy stuff. Let's not talk about sex talk, because that's going to not really go nowhere. So let's just stop right there. If you're going to tell me that Joe was doing it by himself, the almighty Joe Budden was doing the show alone, right? And he himself realized the show wasn't working with how the way he wanted to do it, and he asked for help on the show. Right there, I don't think these are workers. If they're bringing value to the show from the very beginning, making the show into something better than what it was, you can't just be like, yeah, you're just workers at that point. Yeah, he's asking them to come on the pod, but in the essence of, I can't do this alone, and this ain't working. And the ideas that they bring into you, you're using them, and you're making the show into what it is. You're not asking them to be writers. You're asking them to be on-air personalities with you. And apparently some of the stuff that Mal decided to bring to the show, y'all ran with it and made the show better. So I don't think at that point you're going to be like, it's Budden's show, and he makes the rules and he writes the checks. This sound like it wouldn't have been no show without these guys. And it sound like, if you listen to Rory's explanation, that when it started to get a little profitable, he went and wanted to do contracts, and Budden screamed on him. So it sound like everyone's like, you should read what's in your contract. But it sound like Budden didn't even want contracts. If you watched the interview of Rory and Mal about how Budden gets when it comes to contracts or asking about money or asking about financial accounting, he gets really abrasive, aggressive, obnoxious, very difficult to deal with. So they tend to let it go, which is what happens. That's why a bully does what a bully does, because they know you're just going to let it go 9 times out of 10. You're only going to fight when your back is against the wall and you have nothing else to lose. But most of the time, when a bully under the guise of your friend starts to bully you, you're going to just back. All right, but you got it. You got it. I ain't tripping. We friends. I'm gonna leave it to you. And that's the mistake they made. If you listen to this whole thing, it sounds like every time a little more money incremented into it, Budden got a little more secretive and wanted to push things to the side, to the point where they ended up with a $4,000 quote unquote accounting mistake that Rory caught and had to bring it to the Budden's accounting team's attention. And they're like, oh yeah, that was a mistake. We'll fix that ASAP. How you make a $400,000 accounting mistake? But this is what everybody's like, you guys should know what's in your contract. A lot of people don't know what's going on. This is not our business. A lot of people, especially in my comments, was like, they're just workers. They should know that he has control of the pod. It's his pod. It sounded like it was all their pod. What it sounded like was like a 3-way split. Even if he had a little more, maybe it was 60, 30, 30, or maybe it was something along the lines of 35, 35, and he got 40. I don't know, but I don't know. I know that number's off, but maybe they did something where he got a little bit more than they did, but it wasn't much more, is what it sounded like. And then Rory told the story of he sat down and talked to Elliot Wilson at a lunch one time, and Elliot brought up, oh, I'm at Tidal now. I'm willing to pay you guys X amount of dollars for the podcast. I think we can make it pop. He says he took it back to Joe, and Joe spazzed on him, went nuts, talking about how dare you have conversations about this pod without me around, without the team around. You don't you ever do that again. So Rory was like, all right, I'm gonna let it go, blah, blah, blah. He said a few weeks later, Joe walks in, I did the deal with Tidal. Like, he created the deal himself, and he did it for the exact same numbers that Elliot said he was going to give him in the first place. So he screamed on Rory for the Tidal, for even talking to Tidal. Then he goes to talk to Tidal, inks the deal himself, and makes it like he did the deal on his own. So all of these people talking about these guys didn't do this and didn't do that. First of all, they were screamed on and discouraged from doing anything. So then he can go and do it and claim it for himself. That's kind of crazy, bro. And if you saw Budden watched that whole thing, because he came back with the Instagram post talking about, I miss my brothers, I miss my guys, I apologize, because he heard them. He heard what they were saying, and it was real. It was right. It was actual facts. It was dudes telling you, because what happens is when you get dudes that's gonna rock with you, and they're gonna ride with you and try to follow you, a lot of times they'll let a lot of stuff go. Whereas you, as the head of it, may be thinking one thing one way only, and they're looking at it like, I'm just gonna let that ride. And I think Buttons was looking at it from Budden point of view. What's better for Budden? Which is what a narcissist does. A selfish person with a huge ego is going to do that, right? And a person that who looked at it from the jump as, this is mine, I'm bringing you guys in on this, they're going to look at the whole thing as theirs and not see it for what it is, when it's 3 guys in the room all making this what it is, when it was worth nothing. Rory and Mal basically said every time, well, Rory anyway, every time he asked about the accounting, this is how it works. If the money goes into Budden's team first, no matter what your contract says, you need to know what the money was. Because having a contract is one thing, right? Everybody's like, you need to know what's in your contract. Contracts don't always work. Why do you think we have courts? Just because you write something on a piece of paper don't mean the other party is going to follow it. Then you take them to court. This is what people on the internet don't understand business. Business only works when everyone does what they're supposed to do. If I make a contract with you and I'm going to give you $1 million every 2 months, but I never give you the $1 million, I give you 500, and I keep giving you 500,000, you could be like, well, the contract says what? Until I give it to you, the contract is worthless. So if the money coming through me and I'm giving you half of what I'm supposed to give you, this is just an example. Ain't no contract in the world gonna make me give you the rest until you take me to court. And before you take me to court, guess what you're gonna have to do? You're gonna have to ask for the books. So everyone's like, how you asking your employer? Do you go into your employer and that? He wasn't the employer. If you listen to what they're saying, it was a percentage. They get a percentage off of what is made. So if the show brings in $1 million and they get 30%, right? They get a big chunk of that money. So if I'm supposed to get 30% of that million and you're giving me 10% and telling me that's all you giving me because you're the big cheese and I'm not, that's not the contract. So if you're not paying me per contract, I need to see those books so I can see what I'm supposed to be getting. That's what nobody was understanding. All these Joe Budden stands not getting what these guys are saying. I'm glad these guys did this podcast because they make everything clear. If you're supposed to get a percentage, his team takes the checks in and they dole out the money, well, guess who's supposed to be accountable? They are. I don't need to know everything in my contract, even though I do. It doesn't matter. All I know is I get a percentage of what the thing takes. You're trying to dance around and make it like all this other stuff where, oh, I eat better if I get this and you eat this. The contract don't say that. The contract say I get X amount of dollar percentage off of everything that comes in here. Ain't no I eat better, you eat better. None of that, right? If that's not in the contract, that you eat better when you bring it. That's the weirdest, first of all, that's the weirdest contract I could ever hear. If I go out and get a deal for the pod itself, then my portion gonna be greater. Based on the value of the entire pod, not me, not my value. I'm not getting it for me, I'm getting it for the pod, the value of the pod. How can I get more? Unless in a contract it says I get more for everything, then that's fine. But at least give me what I'm owed. If I'm owed 30%, then give me mine. It sounds like he's trying to dwindle them down. Because this guy said it. I can get the 2 new guys for the price of one of you, and then I'm paying half of one of you. I can get 2. He said he told these guys I can get the 2 new guys that I'm getting for the price of just one of you. And cut that in half, and I'll pay both of them what I'm paying half of one of you. If that ain't incentive to cut somebody out, I don't know what is. It's pure greed at that point. If you got 2 dudes that's asking for what they owed, and you got 2 dudes over here that's going to take whatever you give them, guess what you're going to start thinking, man? I might just go ahead and give these dudes a shot. I can make it real awkward over here for these 2 dudes so they just bounce. Because I'm starting to see a lot of money coming in, and I don't want to give it away. Right? So you start to realize this is all about money. This is all about not wanting to pay somebody. He said, I don't feel comfortable paying y'all this X amount of dollars. Now, if you're looking at this from the 2 guys, Rory and Maul's point of view, instead of Budden, you're going to understand if it was you in a situation, you would do the same thing. You would not be feeling like, well, let's just roll with this and I'll figure it out later. No. If this guy's telling you, I got this line around the corner, but you know it's all of us, why should you take less? And why should you not be able to see the books for the whole production? Right? And they didn't say nothing that we didn't already know, but they, as far as why they didn't come back in, we knew it was over him telling him to take a few shows off. We knew that, right? What we didn't know was the amount of times this guy bit his lips to not say nothing in regards to his money. How many times he got his head bit off for asking about his money when he had every right to, but he fell back in the name of friendship, which is why you shouldn't do business with friends in a way, because if you're going to do something nasty, you'll think twice about it if it's a friend. And if it's a friend that's an egomaniac, a narcissist, or someone who is very selfish and think about themselves, it's going to be harder to publicly or privately check that person, because you don't want to ruin the guise of friendship. And a lot of people get cheated out of stuff under the guise of friendship. It's the friends that'll steal from you first, right? Now, this guy, Budden, right? His track record is long of turning on people. Like, this ain't nothing new. I think these guys thought, well, it won't be me. I'm bulletproof. I got this lock with these guys. You see them laughing. Everybody would say, well, what? Or let's say Charlamagne would say, well, what's going to happen when Budden blow this up? That's not us. Don't try to separate us. They thought it wouldn't happen to them. But with a guy like this, it happens to everyone involved. Because it is selfishness. When you're just inherently selfish, you can't help it. A scorpion going to sting, bro. And if I'm looking at it in a real way, these 2 dudes, and I don't know why people like academics kind of like slamming them, because at this point it's a revenge thing. But after you watch that interview, you can't slam these guys. These guys kept it 100. and academic slamming him, which is whatever he's getting back at Rory for whatever, you really can't slam these two guys. They kept it 100. And the stuff they said in this tracks, it all tracks. It feels right. It feels like it's real. A lot of the sacrifices they did for that show, they left this guy in complete control when he shouldn't have been, because they weren't worrying about the money. But that's the worst kind of business people to get, is people who aren't worrying about the money. You got a lot of people broke, destitute, penniless, because they weren't worrying about the money. They weren't about the craft, and they thought somebody had their back, right? If you watch the Walter Mercado documentary, he was only worrying about reading fortunes, the Spanish fortune teller. He was made millions and millions and millions, but he trusted somebody to handle his business, and the dude took everything, took his name, his likeness, he took his show, everything. Every penny he made had to go to this guy first because he signed some crazy contract and went years, couldn't get out of it. The guy that he signed the contract to made more money off his stuff than he did, because he trusted him, and he was only worrying about worrying about doing his job. He wasn't worrying about the money, and that came back to haunt him because he lost a lot of money at the end of that day. So what you need to understand is, when you're someone going into business, even if it's not making no money in the beginning, things need to be set in parameters. As soon as you start making money, let's go. He said he tried to bring up contracts to Joe. Joe went nuts every single time. They finally got a contract in place, and now he wants to know where the money is funneling, and Joe's going crazy over that. Like, he don't want him to touch nothing about the money. He just wants to pay you what he wants to give you and tell you to shut up. And the more you ask, and that's hypocrite stuff. You're telling Lil Yachty, yo, you need to know every inch of that contract. What's this, what's that? But then when his guys are asking him, show me this, show me that, you're screaming on him, right? It's the complete definition of a hypocrite. When you're screaming at somebody else for wanting to ask you about their money, but you're telling everybody else they should know about their money, right? Sound like the end of the day, the moral of the story is, don't let Joe Budden control your money. It needs to be a third party, the money funneling into, and they're accountable. You shouldn't be asking Budden for anything. But it sounds like his team and him are very close, and it seemed like they have a lot of conversations about this money or what's this and that. So he's like a part of that whole accounting team that doles out that money. And he has a lot to say about where it's going and where it ain't going. So, end of the day, these guys laid down with a guy with a track record for being disloyal to people who are loyal to him. It's just a fact. And it didn't take too long. They felt the same sting that everybody else felt. Now they're doing videos and responding to attacks by the same person who attacks everyone. Once they leave him, he has to disparage that. Instead of saying, you know what, it could have been handled better. He did apologize, saying poor leadership on his part. That means I was wrong. So it ain't no more debate. Budden's already said it was poor leadership. That don't absolve you for burning these dudes out of how many millions you done burnt them out of, because they're going to get their money sooner or later, because the lawsuits are coming. It's coming. It's just a fact. It is what it is. Even if they don't do the lawsuits, their companies will on their behalf, because the company's got to get paid. So it is what it is. The lawsuits are coming. The truth's going to come out. And a lot of people are not going to care at that point. They've already took sides. They've already made their mind up that Budden is this hero and he let them do whatever. And now they're salty and they bit the hand that fed them. And Mo was right. He said, man, your rap shows wasn't bringing this many people as these podcasts are. So this was a team effort, bro. This way bigger than your rapping ever was. And it's a fact. Budden wasn't making this kind of money in rap. Just wasn't. It's just a fact. Right? A lot of people loved him, but it wasn't a lot of buying his records and a lot of this and that. Wasn't a lot of people was going to the shows, but it was a niche market. It was a small market. A couple thousand people may come here and there for a show here and there. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. And I need y'all to understand, you may love him as a rapper, but this pod thing, he didn't do this alone. And them dudes deserve to be paid, and I think they're getting burnt. All right? But we'll see where this goes, man. I'm gonna keep y'all updated on where changes that come. But I think this might be one of the last things we got going on with this episode. I mean, with this whole Rory and Mal, because I think they're going to do their own thing, and it's not even going to be about Budden no more. But let me know what y'all think in the comments, man. Let me know how y'all feel about this situation. All right? CLBMG, follow, subscribe, like. Catch y'all on the flip side. Peace.